is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we get into your favorite movies and the deeper meaning within their films. And once again, we're doing a very different episode. We have two guests this time, Mr. Camilo and Cade from USC's Film School. We are going to be talking about Endgame and Infinity War. We're going to be getting into a little bit of the details between both films and how they fit into one large film. RB3's got a lot of hot takes. He thinks he's cool with these hot takes.
No, it's not a hot take.
I'm just playing with you. But
there's like the Avengers episode of the meaning of.
I was gonna say we've had both of you guys on before, but not at the same time. This is the most people we've had on the same time, so I'm gonna try my best to not make it a food fight.
And we've got like the proportional representation of the MCU here.
Not really. There's not a lot of brown dudes on the any brown dudes on the MCU.
Yeah, we do have two.
I was gonna say I saw I follow the box office, and this is kind of what I want to start out with because I think it's important. And the largest, again, and I always say this, and I scream it at Hollywood, the largest minority representation is Latinos. And yet not a single Latino Avenger and more Latin people than any other minority group saw this movie.
Isn't Lupita Nyong'o, she's technically
she is, kind of.
She's not
Zoe Saldana. But she's not even in this movie.
Oh,
Zoe Saldana, I guess.
But
But that's it. And it's crazy to think that, more Latin people saw this movie than any other minority group.
Even
but
China?
anyways,
even China?
What do you mean?
China had like 300.
But that's full. I'm talking about
a full foreign country.
I'm talking about
domestic.
Talking about U.S. based.
Got it.
Yeah, US
wow,
based.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But either way, let's get right into it, man. The first thing I want to say is $1.2 billion this movie made.
That's amazing.
That's
it made $350 million opening weekend. That is $100 million more than the record that was previously set by Infinity War, which
amazing.
Is insane on a different level. But I kind of want to start this conversation off by something I wanted to get into in our review, but we couldn't really do it.
Oh, really?
And that's the idea of these films, which if you really think about it, these are 22 Marvel films. And this whole weekend has kind of been this representation of what the possibility of fandom can do and what the possibility of like this nerd culture has gotten to.
Are you talking Game of Thrones?
I'm talking Game of Thrones because in Game of Thrones this past Sunday, we got 18 million people tuned into the Battle of Winterfell, a.k.a. The Long Night.
Wow.
And it kind of puts things into perspective because I think about 1.2 billion worldwide, and I think of Game of Thrones, 18 million. And these are two genre-type movies/TV shows. One is a medieval fantasy show. The other is a crazy comic book adventure. And the fact that so many people around the world are watching this, I personally want to take time to bathe in it, and just as someone who's grown up when being a nerd wasn't cool because I'm from a different generations than you guys. I'm slightly older, so when I was
you're a nerd?
Yes.
I can't be here. It's bad for my reputation.
You're bringing back PTSD for me, man.
No,
Come on.
I'm a nerd too.
No, but
We're
I'm
all
saying
nerds,
it's crazy to think that this is high level. Like, I'm on a Game of Thrones podcast as well, and
Casterly Talk, check it out.
Shout out to Casterly Talk. But when I talk to these people, like a Rachel, like a Lon, and I have conversations with them, it hits me that it's like, oh no, these guys are like really, like, they're like me. They read up on theories, they read the books, they get like, they debate about characters. Like, that's a different level versus someone who is casually watching a film. So my second time watching this movie, I thought it was a fascinating sequence of events because I saw it with a more general movie-going audience, and I can't lie to you, half the time people were talking around this movie, it being like, who's that? What's going on? What movie's this?
Yeah.
Thor has a mom? Who's Ant-Man?
Thor has a mom?
What's going on?
Nobody saw the worst MCU movie.
I was shocked, and it hit me. If there's 1.2 billion people watching this movie, it really goes to show that probably 90% of them haven't seen all 22 MCU movies, and this one kind of references all 22.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's fascinating to think of like this really adventure of comic book stuff, and then in reality the majority of these people are like probably seen one or two of these movies, like maybe they've seen Winter Soldier and Civil War, and then they're like watching Endgame. I don't know, it's something I want to open up to. What do you think of that? And it's crazy. I just think it's nuts.
I think it's interesting
billion.
how both the main villains had like blue and purple colored skin. Like I want a real
foreigners.
villain. I want a real villain who's a human being who has flaws.
Cersei.
Who
Cersei Lannister.
Immune to fire.
Killmonger.
Who isn't
Cersei Lannister.
Who isn't more powerful than Hulk. You know, I'm ready for a villain that's just like the Joker or something.
Yeah, I'm with you. I that's another conversation for Game of Thrones, because a lot of people are debating about the whole Night King thing, where they're like, you know, I wanted the Night King to be a villain, and I'm like, it's way more interesting for Cersei to be a villain, someone who has flaws, someone who's a human being, someone who's much more political, because I think that's much more realistic in this world.
On an equal playing field.
Yeah. But either way, let's get into it, RB3, since no one cares about $1.2 billion.
Oh, no, I care. No, we care. Camilo.
Camilo, what do you think?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I just think it is incredible, because as someone who's followed each one of the movies, and I've seen them all, I've seen them all at least once. When I watched Endgame, one of my biggest impressions and takeaways when I was sitting in the theater was how people are going to be lost. Like, my dad is going to be lost. And even though my dad likes superhero movies,
I thought of my mom too.
Likes watching superhero movies with me, and like he'll watch them casually. He doesn't keep up like the way that we do, and the way that people interested in this stuff. Like we read up on stuff. We know the theories. Like, we knew who Ronan. Like, we knew the name of Ronan, even though it's never said in the movie. Like, we know about that stuff. And then to someone else, like my dad, or for example, like some of my friends who don't watch every single Marvel movie, I can imagine that being a really, really hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. And I kind of want to commend, but also, like, I want to commend Marvel for taking that risk and for being like, listen, we can't just cater to everyone. We got to cater to our people. We got to cater to, and it treats us like comic book readers. Like, comic books don't stop and fill you in on the little details every time it's introduced. It's just, you're either on for the ride or you're not. And so I commend them for doing that. At the same time, though, film is not a comic book. Like, it's not that medium. Film is it has a much broader appeal. And like, I remember growing up, we talked about Spider-Man movies last time, loving the X-Men movies. And then I remember when the Avengers came out and people were all like, and this was the first time people were really, really talking about MCU movies, at least in my sphere in high school. And there were like Loki fans and all this stuff. And it was just the first time I'd seen like girls into superhero movies the same way that like I was, which I thought was so strange, but very, very cool. And just to see how far we've come to now. But yeah, that's just what I have to say. And I think that there's going to be a pretty big box office drop this opening weekend, or this second weekend, as a result.
Maybe.
As a result of the rewatchability because the thing is, when MCU movies come out, people will go back again and again, even if they aren't comic book fans necessarily, like, because they just love it entirely. And I'm not saying people don't love this one, people do, but I think that this one has like so many hidden like details that people might not have caught entirely, or might not have like wrapped their head around and been like,
see, that's what for me, that's what pushed this movie like over the edge. Was like, I don't know what it is, but like, this was kind of the first MCU movie since the first Avengers that I really felt like super immersed. Every minute I was looking for something. Every minute I was intrigued, trying to see what's going on next. And what I love about this movie is that everybody has a character that they've connected to the most over the past 10 years of the MCU. And for me, that was Iron Man. So tracking his story and kind of letting him be, in some ways, the protagonist of Endgame was...
I'd say he's probably the protagonist.
I think that...
I think it's Cap and Iron Man, but I agree.
For you guys, what characters were you tracking the most throughout this story?
Yeah, well, kind of to follow that up, I think it's crazy to think that the biggest movie of all time, which is Endgame now, it probably will be the biggest movie of all time, is the most inside baseball movie of all time. Like, it's literally the one that is like... has little references to movies that not everyone is. I find that to be crazy. Like, it's not.
I don't think you can't see this movie. I don't think you can't see this movie without having seen every other MCU. Like,
but there are people that have.
Like, obviously, it makes it so much better.
Yes.
Like, obviously, that's why we loved it.
It's more rewarding. For
of
fans.
course, me and Robert loved it so much. I don't know. I know you guys don't like it.
I love this movie.
I still liked it.
I love this movie, but I love it because of what I'm saying. I love it because it's a finale. It's the end of. It's a season finale. It's the end of all these movies coming together and having this conclusion. That's why I love it. On a separate movie basis, like if I compare this to Guardians of the Galaxy, I still like Guardians more. If I compare this to another movie, I probably like another movie more. That doesn't mean I don't like this movie. I like it because it's a great season finale. But yeah, to answer your question about following characters, I personally,
I know that. I can tell you. I can tell you.
You already know where I'm going.
I can tell you exactly why he doesn't like this movie. I can tell you exactly why he doesn't like this movie. It's because Thor, man. Thor got fucking fat.
I personally love Thor, and Thor is my favorite for years. So Infinity War to me was the most rewarding because it's Thor's movie. Thor is kicking ass. He's taking names. He's freaking like he's doing everything in that movie.
Responsible for the death of half the people in the universe.
Absolutely.
Should have went for the head. Should have went for the head.
But
so was Doctor Strange. Too.
I love Thor, and I gotta say, I talked to my friend right after the movie, and I told him, I'm like, it's crazy to think that this is Endgame and we have all these characters. However, the main characters, and they really make it a point to say, the main characters of this movie is Cap and Iron Man. They're the ones that do the most. They're the ones that talk the most. They have the most screen time.
Thor is up there too. I say Thor's up there too.
Kind of Thor. I mean, if you consider crying.
Yeah, the whole
movie.
We went to a whole one of Thor's movies. We went to a whole one of Thor's movies.
Hey, like, but no one got that part. Everyone was like Thor: The Dark World. No one's seen Thor: The Dark World.
I mean,
or remembers it.
That's the worst MCU movie, and I've seen that one.
It is the worst MCU movie.
As someone who didn't never see Thor: The Dark World, I kind of liked being able to like just see sort of like a trailer sort of version of it in this movie.
Yeah, you don't have to sit through that entire bullshit. Yeah. You can just watch it.
Because I know Asgard, right? Yeah. I know that his mom exists. Yeah. I know Natalie Portman
was in the movie.
Is salty towards MCU.
Yeah, right? I told you on the card right here. Low key, Natalie Portman spoiled the fact that she was in this movie like years ago, like I think like 2 years ago or some shit. Because she was like, I would never do another MCU movie. But if they asked me to be in Avengers 4, I wouldn't say no. You know?
Yeah. She was also at the premiere.
Yeah, she was at the premiere.
That kind of spoiled it for me.
Oh, I mean,
as someone who didn't watch anything, just seeing her at the premiere.
But did she get a check for using recycled footage or?
No, that was new footage.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
One shot was new. One.
I still think they use like an alternative take and then
like that's what I think.
I think one shot. I still think that one, the one far away where we don't really see her face. Obviously not Natalie Portman. The one where she gets up from bed. I think that's her. And I think she was there for like half a day, and that's it.
Really? Because I can see that being just a recycled shot.
I can see it too.
Like a take that they didn't use, and then or for a scene that was cut, and then they have this footage, and then because they could just CGI rocket into that moment.
That's what I thought
and that's why
too.
he like runs across real fast because that's all you really need, and you don't even see him like putting
the thing in.
Because and I thought that was just like to smartly recycle footage, but I do imagine she was paid for it because it was still her likeness.
Yeah. They gave her whole credit at the end.
Yeah.
One thing, let's jump into what you want to talk about, RB3, and I want to clarify by saying something that I was talking to Cade, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I'm kind of. I don't know, man. I'm in a hostile mood right now, man.
Hostile.
I got my boxing gloves on. Maybe it's because of Game of Thrones, and I just didn't know that. The amount of like hot takes and the amount of like, yo, Game of Thrones is trash now kind of attitude coming at people who like Game of Thrones like me.
So
after Sunday's episode,
I think if you think that episode was trash, you like Game of Thrones for the wrong
reasons. And I got told the opposite. I got told if you like this episode, you like Game of Thrones for, and it's kind of crazy to me. And I really want to say, and I said it on Twitter, it's like, hey guys. We just got the biggest movie of all time being a very cool nerd movie, and we just got the biggest episode of TV of all time being a medieval fantasy zombie horror movie. Let's just take a step back and be like, hey, that was kind of cool. Like, Endgame was cool. Infinity War was cool. Like, we don't have to constantly hate.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I just want peace, man.
I don't really hate
Infinity War. You want
RB3.
RB3.
I don't hate Infinity War. I actually really like that. I wouldn't have seen the movie that many times if I really hated
I'm going to quote you from our review. You said, wash the bad taste of Infinity War out of my mouth.
Well,
that's some...
Yeah, I mean, just in comparison to this movie. But what I will say, going back to, like, the whole thing we were saying about, like, how you... not watching the Marvel movies. Like I've watched maybe a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, but I watched the most recent one and I liked it. You know.
Yeah, there you go.
But I didn't have no idea what was going on. So maybe like the fact that I didn't know.
Why would you watch it?
Because you told me to watch it, right?
Well, no, but you said you saw Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah, I saw Battle of the Bastards. Yeah,
and I said, okay, then maybe you can
for class.
Well, okay, but I said maybe you can just watch it.
Yeah, and I did just watch it.
Because of the director. Cool. To me, that's what I said on Casterly Talk. I said this is more about the director than anything else. Because to me, this is him being like, look how cool I am at directing.
Wait, I'm lost. Are we talking about Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, the director is incredible.
So Miguel
Sapochnik.
Oh yeah.
He's done like all of the
battles.
battle scenes.
Oh, did he do Battle of the Bastards?
Battle of the Bastards. He did
cool.
Hard Home.
Yeah,
Watchers on the Wall, I think maybe.
Yeah,
but either
I
way,
like the spectacle. I love the spectacle incredible. For it. You know.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think RB3, but you disagree that I can love both Infinity War and Endgame.
No, you can love both. You can totally love both. You know,
like
you can
both.
totally love both. You know, I just think that one is more underwhelming than the other. Yeah, one is more superior.
Yeah,
Talk to me.
I agree.
Talk to me about Endgame, Cade. What is it about this movie that you guys cling to so much?
Well, man, I just thought this movie was, like, for one thing, for them to make a 3-hour movie and for me to not look at the time once to wonder when this movie's going to end, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And I think that this movie was incredible because it's a rare thing to start a movie out where our heroes have failed. Mm-hmm. Right, and like to know the weight of their failure, and then to not know where it goes after the first 10 minutes, right? Like that was incredible to me too, where they just killed Thanos, and like yeah, sure, I knew from like some theories that time travel was like a thing and all of this, but I thought they spent the right amount of time with each group of characters, and I thought that they gave each of them like a very satisfying sort of arc. Granted, I will say I don't think Black Widow's death was used to its full potential. I think that could have been set up a little bit more dramatically. But I love this movie because I just think it's one of the, I mean, it is the biggest accomplishment in movie history, and it's with the most fun, action-filled, witty characters that but I will say also that I think this movie it could have leaned a little bit more into the dramatic side of things. I think that's kind of like one of the issues I have with Infinity War is that it kind of did the same thing where it was like jokes per minute, and like that is a Marvel like thing to do, is to have those witty dialogue. I just think it could have been scaled back a little bit, but
in Endgame or in Infinity War?
Both, honestly. Well, more so Infinity War. I thought like the action sequences were a little goofy, but I think Endgame really succeeded in defining a generation of movies and doing it in the most powerful and emotional way possible.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't think, like, I didn't walk out of that movie thinking anything else could have been done differently.
Yeah.
What do you think, Camilo?
Yeah, I was going to jump to you.
Because I know you hated it.
I did not. All right, I want to set the record straight. I did not hate Endgame. I did like it, and I have seen it twice already. I'm planning on going again either Friday or this weekend with a friend. Yeah, because, I mean, the thing is, I do like the movie, and I agree with you. The runtime is... you don't really feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tight 3 hours.
Yeah, it's a good 3 hours. I think my whole thing with it, and I see what you're saying about like nothing could have really been done differently. I agree in terms of main storyline and beats, but I actually think a lot of the minor execution moments, such as like the comedies, such as some of the little details, I think to me kind of don't let me stay on board as much as I was with Infinity War, for example. Mm-hmm. I just think that Infinity War is such a tighter paced film, and everything, like, it just moves. It has such a direct and forward pace, and you never lose yourself, and it's told so wonderfully and so beautifully well. And even though it's set around 6 different MacGuffins, each one of those...
Wait, what's a MacGuffin?
A MacGuffin is essentially something that kind of sets the plot in motion, but isn't really what the whole thing's about.
Oh,
and
like Captain Marvel?
That's funny.
Captain MacGuffin.
And that's what Infinity War kind of was. But even then, it was just each moment was told well. And it's true, Thanos is the inevitable. And you kind of know where it's going in Infinity War. And each moment it raises the stakes a little bit more. And you have that growing sense of dread that even though it has comedy in it, with few exceptions, I think it works really, really well. Whereas in Endgame, to me at least, I wasn't too big on a lot of the humor that was there. I thought that some of it, and some of it I did, and some of it I laughed really hard. But I felt like this one, to carry the kind of dread that Infinity War kind of left off and like to carry forward, this one didn't fully cement me in that same world. I didn't fully feel, maybe it was the 5-year time jump. Because for me, that was, I think, more so than the head being cut off. I think it was the 5-year time jump right there. That's kind of where I was like, what is going on? What is happening right now?
That's bold. It's a bold move.
It's a bold move. And I don't know, for me, when it opens on Tony Stark, when after the Marvel Studios logo happens, and it's him standing there on the ship, or no, he's playing like paper football with Nebula. I was like, what? This is a dreadful moment, and you're choosing to like focus on this like very happy part before, like, I don't know, I feel you kind of dropped the ball there in terms of how you carry on Infinity War's like impact and legacy.
Just a quick follow-up. Did you feel differently the first time than the second time you saw it? Because I did. Did you feel? Did you feel like the first time you saw it, you were like, "That was good," but and the second time was like, "Okay, I feel better about it."
Yeah, no, I definitely feel better about it. I think for me, and I've told RB3 this countless times, it's always the second or third time that I watch a movie that I can really form my full thoughts and opinions. Because the first time, and especially with a movie like Endgame, especially with a movie like Infinity War, first time you watch something, your expectations can be really, really high, and a movie could barely meet them, and you'd be like, man, that was pretty disappointing. But then you watch it the second time, and you kind of checked your expectations at the door, and you can kind of accept the movie for what it is, and you really see the filmmaking and the craft behind it. Because now you're not being surprised by the story as much. You're being surprised by the way it's being presented to you, and you can like take that in more and accept the storyline for what it is. So I definitely did enjoy it a lot the second time too. I liked it more. I wouldn't say I liked it exponentially more. I think the pacing for me felt better the second time a lot. But I did feel that the first hour and the second hour felt a little hit or miss and just up and down. There were parts I liked of each, and there were parts I wasn't too big on of each. But then the whole final battle to the end is amazing. And one thing I'll say is that it has, and I agree with you so much in your review of Endgame when you guys talked about it, the last hour is so much more emotional and so much more better that I feel like it hits a higher high than Infinity War ever could have attempted to reach. That being said, the road to get there was not as, for me, compelling as I found Infinity War. And I mean, I still had a great time, but I feel like a lot of the reason that people gravitate towards Endgame so much right now is because that last hour leaves you on such an elation and such a high, which is commendable, and they did such a good job with it, and it was beautiful.
And it's very hard to do, as we've all said. Cade said, Camilo said that balancing all those characters and making it compelling and not cheesy, because it's so easy to get a little cheesy. It made everything kind of worked in the finale. You think, man, this is going to be ridiculous, and it wasn't. It was dark. It was tension filled. You felt like, oh my God, like what's going to happen now? Like now that everyone's fighting each other.
I think what I really enjoyed about Endgame was like it really is a masterpiece in that it took full advantage of the past 10 years of cinema that they've made, and it made their past the solution to their problem.
It was a celebration.
It was such a celebration, and I think that that's just so, like, for me, I enjoyed every minute that they were in the other movies back in the past, because for me, it brought me back to my childhood, just being in those moments, but also having the nostalgia for them as well. I thought that was, like, there's just so much going on that I really liked all of those time travel scenes.
Right.
It's one of those things where everyone remembers where they were when they saw Avengers for the first time, and that crazy 360 shot.
Yeah,
it's great. It's great. I think it works so well. RB3, you've seen it twice, three times?
Yeah, twice. Yeah.
Twice. Now that
so we've all seen it twice.
Yeah,
right?
I've only seen it once.
Oh, got it. Seen it once.
All right, don't respect Cade's opinion.
Now that you have now that you've kind of let it sink in a little bit more, what are your
what are my thoughts?
Yeah.
No, I honestly, I mean, you all know this. I love this movie. This is probably one of my favorite
MCU movies.
I wouldn't say like in terms of like ranking it, because to some extent you're right. Like to some extent I can't really compare it to like Winter Soldier, or I can't really compare it to Black Panther, because it's just like a totally different thing. You know what I mean? Like I kind of almost like have a hard time putting it on the same scale. Now, in terms of comparing it to Avengers movies, I definitely like it more than Age of Ultron, and I like it more than Infinity War. Now, do I like it more than the first Avengers movie? Yeah, I still got to determine that a little bit. That probably is going to take a little more time, only because that movie, you know.
I think to answer your question, and I guess we can all go around the table with this. I think I do. I think I like it more than the first Avengers.
Really?
Endgame?
Yeah, I think I like Endgame. I would still put Infinity War just because I'm a sucker for it. And then probably Endgame, and then probably the first Avengers, and then probably Age of Ultron. I don't know if you guys have the same ranking.
I think I go Infinity War at the top.
Yeah, Infinity War,
Infinity
Endgame.
War to me is just something else. But I think I put the original Avengers second, and then I put Endgame, and then Age of Ultron.
That's low.
But the thing is, I actually like Age of Ultron a lot more than most people.
I was going to say,
which is
I'm turning a
weird.
page, because when I first saw it, I was probably the most negative out of my friend groups, because I was like, oh, here's Joss Whedon being very Whedon-y, and I was very off board with the Whedon point at that point. But I'm turning a page, but I still probably put it last as far as Avengers movies. But I loved all the Avengers movies. Cade?
You put Endgame last?
No. I put Age of Ultron.
Oh, okay, man.
I just said Endgame is second for me.
Endgame second.
Endgame to Infinity War.
I just like adjusting this mic. Let's see. It reminds me of Tony Stark's robot. You know the one.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Shout out to him. What's
I'm
his
gonna
name?
donate you to a
I forgot his
MIT?
name. Yeah, I forgot his name.
Dummy.
That's right.
I can't believe I know that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's a
my
good one.
ranking.
Get you in the trivia schmodown.
Yeah.
So my ranking.
The Avengers
for
movies.
Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I'm gonna soak up this attention for a second. Okay. All right. I think number 1, Endgame.
Endgame. Oh, okay. All right.
Number 2, 2012 Avengers.
All right. Yeah.
Number 3. What was the other ones?
Infinity War and Age of Ultron.
Okay, Infinity War third, and then Ultron last.
Yeah.
And I mean, I enjoyed Ultron as much as I enjoyed Iron Man 2, and I enjoyed Iron Man 2, but
Yeah.
I like Iron Man 2 more than Age of Ultron personally. It's funny because you say you're turning a page on. I actually hate Age of Ultron more and more as time goes on.
I think it's because I was so strong on it, because I was very like, man, that was whack. I think now I'm being like, wasn't that bad.
Well, see, to me, it's almost like every subsequent movie like further devalues it. You know, like I think what would have really like obviously like Cap picking up the hammer was like super hard like at the end of Endgame. We're spoiling the movie, by the way.
Yeah,
I guess we should have said
that's
that.
fine.
I think we said
Yeah, that's fine.
It's
we can put it in the description.
Yeah. I think Cap picking up the hammer was great. I think that moment is just slightly blemished by the fact that Vision picked it up before him and Age of Ultron, where that really wasn't necessary. And the only reason they really did that was to show you how powerful Vision was. But at the end of the day, he was only really a factor in that movie. Like all the subsequent
I like Vision in
movies,
Infinity War.
What did he do?
He was
dying the entire movie.
He got damaged.
He had some.
Yeah.
I like him in Civil War.
What he do in Civil War? He damn near killed the only black character.
He made points.
We have from the beginning.
He made good points.
He almost killed Rhodey, man. I can't forgive Vision for that, man.
Yeah.
I can't forgive Vision for almost taking
I'm
that War
surprised
Machine.
Rhodey forgives freaking everyone for. I don't know. I kept thinking of that, like the fact it's that scene in Endgame where he's crawling towards Rocket.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, that's hardcore. He's still freaking
He still doesn't
paralyzed.
have legs. Yeah.
I'd be so mad about that.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's so forgiving about it is like, good on Rhodey, man. Good on him. But keep going about Endgame and what is it about this comparison to Infinity War that you are so passionate about? RB?
Well, no, I'm not passionate. I think it's interesting looking at both of these movies because they're like I feel like they call them one thing. I mean, I think they're two completely separate different things.
Part 1 and 2.
I even have a hard time with that because I think they're telling different stories. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like Infinity War vaguely had a protagonist. Like it vaguely tried to have a central focus just for the pure satisfaction of like setting up the events leading up to the snap, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like whereas it had the objective and it had a plot, it didn't really have much in the way of character. And I feel like Endgame to me was like almost the flip side of that, where it was like almost all character instead of being like an action movie. Because I feel like even if you look at the amount of action that's in Infinity War and the amount of action that's in Endgame, Infinity War definitely has more action, even though Endgame is longer. But that's because Endgame is mostly going back to it spends the entire second act going back to older movies, and that's the action, that's the appeal of it. So I think I personally side more with Endgame because I feel like it has more to do with Captain America, particularly Captain America. When we're talking about like characters who you follow Iron Man, you follow Thor. Cap is my guy, you know what I mean? So I feel like this movie did Cap way better with way more respect, and like had a much. But I feel like a lot of the characters actually had a much stronger goal than just like chasing the purple guy, you know? So
interesting.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Sorry, Endgame definitely put character first and action second, where I feel like Infinity War kind of did the opposite.
Camilo, I kind of want to hear some counters to that, because I know you like Endgame, but what are the things that kind of took you out of it?
Well, I kind of wanted to touch on that because I totally I see what you're saying about the lack of there being like that protagonist. And listen, I did like how Endgame had Captain America and Tony Stark kind of at the forefront. Like I thought Captain America had a really, really good time to shine. Yeah. And I thought he was really great. And this is a character who I think is really cool, but I don't think got his dues in Infinity War. And that's I don't see that as a slight on Infinity War though. I think it's just they were telling another story. They were telling a story and he played his part in it, but he wasn't the driving force, and he didn't need to be. For me at least, for why I think Infinity War is super great is just the protagonist is Thanos. It's really, really, he's kind of the glue that holds them all together right now. And kind of the whole thing is they're kind of approaching it. They don't know what they're doing, and they're all approaching it from different angles, thinking that that's going to work, when actually that's the exact opposite thing that ends up ruining their chances of attacking him. That's why at the beginning of Endgame, when even though they are a smaller team and they approach him together, that's why they can kind of succeed and kill him off, is because they actually came in with a plan and they were like, all right, we know what we're doing, we know what we're going up against, like let's get this son of a bitch, which is an awesome line, by the way. Yeah. But for me, in Infinity War, the characters are there, and the characters have been there throughout all these movies. We've had I think it was the 18th or 19th MCU movie. We had all those previous films to set them up, and this one was really just, how are you going to react when the greatest threat in the world is right in front of you? And it's kind of like that whole thing where, I mean, for me, like the Star-Lord moment in Infinity War that people hate, I love. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I think it's all character.
That he
starts hitting Thanos when they're about to get the gauntlet off, and people hate that moment. But the thing is, I think the detail there is so perfect, because if you watch Guardians 2 again, the moment when, spoilers for Guardians 2 as well, the moment when Ego says, it's a shame I put a tumor in your mother's head or something like that, the first thing Peter Quill does without even thinking is he just starts shooting him with his guns, like without hesitation. And you just see like that primal rage that comes with him, and you don't mess with his family, you don't mess with the people he loves and cares about. And it's the same thing in Infinity War. He never explicitly says like, oh yeah, but Gamora's dead. You just hear Mantis saying, I feel the like sadness I feel and whatnot, and it's just like this beautiful moment where you see gears turning. It's just like, that's what to me Infinity War was. It wasn't explicit, just like, here's your time to shine, here's your storyline on your own, developing from this huge catastrophe. It's this catastrophe is happening in front of you, deal with it right now, and that's what I love.
It's interesting because I think we're all kind of agreeing, and I think you brought it up, RB3, is the fact, and as well as you, Cade, the fact that it's interesting because I still argue that Captain America and Iron Man, and I said in the review, I feel like this is Cap at his best.
Me too.
Yeah.
Better than Winter Soldier, better than Civil. Like this.
Oh, yeah.
Made me like Cap, and I've never really liked Cap.
I was gonna say, like, I still say, like, the hardest scene
Like,
is when everybody like fucks him up, and then Cap just like walks in, like,
yeah,
I'm telling you, that's hard.
That made me like
That's
Cap.
hard.
It made me feel like, Cap's a badass.
Yeah. And when he tightens the shield,
it's him pulling the Jon Snow Battle of the Bastards, him going against the entire army.
Right.
It makes me really like Cap, and again, I'm not a Cap guy. I find him to be corny at times.
Same.
But at the same time, it's one of those things where you get that reward of being a Cap fan and being like, yo, Cap's a badass. Iron Man's a badass in Endgame. He's a freaking badass. Yeah. And Infinity War, Thor's a freaking badass. Yeah. In this one, though, in Endgame, I'm like, yo, they really undercut Thor. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, even that awesome scene for Cap is a little shade. It's a little middle finger towards Thor.
What do you
the Mjolnir scene?
Which scene?
Because
Mjolnir, I was like, bro, that's a little like...
You wanted him to have both hammer and stone
extra like a cherry on top of like, not only is he a bum and fat and dumb and crying, but now he can't even pick up his own hammer. He sucks.
He picked it up.
I'm saying like the fact that Cap can pick it up too is like, it undercuts Thor even a little more. And I'm like, and that sucks because Iron Man is such a badass in this movie, and so is Cap. And I love Iron Man. You know, I'm a big Iron Man fan, but I still felt like shaded, bro. I was like, come on, man.
and honestly, I'm not too into Thor. I know he's your guy.
Yeah.
But like, listen, everything they've been doing with him from Ragnarok and Infinity War, like they were just really, really, really building to something great. And the whole moment when he cuts off Thanos' head at the beginning, it's just like, finally we get this. He gets the satisfaction, and I kind of like how it broke him. Like when we get to this 5 years later, and like when Hulk says the word Thanos, he has that moment where he just like grabs the shirt and just like pauses, and it's a really, really great. That's a really great time.
Yeah.
That's a really, really great scene right there. But I think overall, I was kind of bummed that they threw away Thor that way. And to me, it just felt like we're kind of doing Thor this way just so we can make him pass on the baton a little bit easier. It just like makes it. I think it makes it an easier pill to swallow.
I totally disagree.
We'll get into it because you guys loved Bum Thor.
But and I didn't necessarily hate him, but I just thought that like, wow, what was the whole point of like that whole Infinity War storyline?
Not just that, Ragnarok.
And Ragnarok.
That my favorite scene, and I put it. I just did movie fights last week, and I put one of my favorite scenes of all time was Thor Ragnarok when he has the vision of Odin, and Odin is like, "You're not Thor, the god of hammers."
Yeah,
you know, like, that's one of my favorite.
And then he opens his eyes,
and it's just all lightning, and he's made of lightning.
So
and he's
cool.
like, bro, I love when Odin says when he's like, you know, I'm not as powerful as you, and he's like, no, you're more powerful than me. That's Thor, and that's why I was like, but bro,
he had that moment at the end.
Sucks. Even War Machine is like, bro, you're made of cheese. What did he say? Like, you're made of cheese whiz?
Cheese
like,
whiz.
Come on,
No,
that sucks.
That moment at the end is
incredible because I love the thunder clap, and then the two hammers just come in, and it's great. But it still felt like he got his ass kicked, and Captain America was the one kicking ass.
But this is why I said to you, like, listen, bro, like, Thor, he lost his mother, his father, his brother, his sister, his entire
Natalie
planet.
Portman. I would be like that if I lost Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman, his entire planet, half of his people after the snap. So he got a quarter of his people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say?
I don't know how you're not going to turn into a
Here's my follow-up to you. Here's my counter to you. Maybe it's just because I'm obsessed with Thor Ragnarok, and it's probably one of my favorite MCU movies of all time.
Yeah.
The end of Thor Ragnarok, when Thor sits on the throne, that to me is like King Thor. Let's go. He's missing one eye. He's thinking about his father. He knows he's more powerful than him now. That to me is Thor embracing, like, yeah, I'm the king. Like, let's go. Loki's my homie. We're finally good, like, after years of not being good. Like, Valkyrie is my right hand. Like, this felt like Thor is like on the top. Let's go.
And then we go to him playing Fortnite.
Exactly.
Can I talk about Thor for a second?
Yeah.
So I really, really liked Thor after the 5 years later because I loved how it represented coping through what somebody like that has been through. And what we see with Thor in every other MCU movie is this god with a godlike ego. Right? And he's this guy, and he's the baddest in town, and we even see that get that torn down in Ragnarok. He's not able to escape right away, and I think I think when it shows him being bum Thor, I like that name. That's
I like how that's the name for it. Yeah.
I think it shows that Thor isn't a guy to talk about his feelings, right? It's a kind of a commentary on masculinity in that Thor channels his emotions into other things, such as drinking beer and being an alcoholic and
playing Fortnite
and yelling at kids.
Yeah. And what I liked about that is that by the end of it, it gave him, by the time that he got to where he was when they were killing Thanos at the end, I think it made it so much more powerful, because here he is, instead of channeling his anger and his rage into meaningless things that are resulting in, not the Thor we know. By the time he gets to that point, he's able to channel all that rage and all of that emotion into actually getting revenge and avenging.
Yeah.
Title sequence. Avenging. Everything he lost. And I think we wouldn't have had that payoff if he was just Thor the whole time, being this guy strutting around. He's like, fine that his whole family died and his whole fucking identity's gone.
Yeah.
I
like seeing Thor at his lowest of lows. Like, it's about time, because we've seen Iron Man deal with that in Iron Man 3. We've seen Cap deal with that a little bit. And Civil War, at the end of Civil War, we saw him at his lowest. And I'm glad we see Thor finally, like, listen, man, like, as much as I love the whole moment of him grabbing the throne in Thor Ragnarok, he's also still coping with the fact that his entire planet just got destroyed, And I love the lesson at the end of Thor Ragnarok, where the end of Thor Ragnarok was like, Asgard is not a place, it's a people.
Yeah.
Right. But then he lost half of his people. So, it's just like, I don't know how much lower you can go, So for me, I like seeing the character development. I like seeing the fact that Thor is, Thor has to become a bum in order to realize his potential, And like Cade said, like, he, it's about like that shattered masculinity. And throughout these especially throughout Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War, he's a fucking man-child. So, of course, he's going to respond in the most man-child-y way, with drinking beer and playing Fortnite all day. So.
What do you can I just counter and say you don't feel like he was kind of a punchline, though? Especially because who was the funniest part of the movie? Thor. And Thor was funny because he was bum Thor, because everyone laughed at him when he was just sitting there and is like, is he asleep? And he's like, no, I think he's dead. Like, that's hysterical.
That was a pretty funny
the scene where he has sunglasses on and I told you he has like headphones on and he's not paying attention and he's like half asleep. Everyone in the theater was cracking up at Thor because it's like, ha, look at that guy.
Yeah, but even though he's funny, it's the result of a very serious thing. Like, it's not just, there's the fucking Lebowski guy, It's like...
It's not like calling him main guy.
Rocket slaps him around. He's like, snap out of it. You suck. And I was like, bro, even Rocket's like, bro, you suck.
It's actually sad. Like, it's sad to see, somebody doing that to themselves.
Yeah. But it's played for laughs.
It is played for laughs. This is my personal, maybe it's because I like Thor. As someone who doesn't like Thor, I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I feel the same way, because I'm okay with there being jokes about it to a certain extent, but it was just every opportunity.
If it was Cap, how would you feel, bro? If it was Fat Cap, the thing is, and he was crying the whole movie.
I like
about Peggy Carter,
where he sees his mom. I like that moment.
I love that moment.
That's great.
And because it's like, I'm okay if I don't care the fact that he's like overweight or like that he's coping with it in different ways. I just didn't like how he was just the butt end of every joke, and he was just so. And I'm okay with him being broken, but like, they only played it for comedy, when I feel like you could have gone into that darker, dramatic side that I think would have elevated that whole thing entirely. Like in the mom scene, tapped into that for that moment, and I was like, whoa! And it's a beautiful conversation, beautiful moment. Rene Russo, fantastic. You made Thor: Dark World actually good. Like, that was my one of my main complaints about Endgame was like, of all the Marvel movies to go back to, you choose Thor: The Dark World. Like, you could have gone to the Collector in Guardians of the Galaxy. In fact, you like literally, instead of making it 3 different trips going places, you could have just done 2. There's 3 in New York, and then there's 3 in space at the same time. Just do that. Like, I don't know why they didn't do that. It was just
I think it's for that moment.
It was literally for that moment, and honestly,
it's a good moment.
That moment works really well.
The 2 moments that I really love, emotional moments and not funny beats for Thor, Thor in this movie is that one with his mom and the ending with Valkyrie. I thought that was great.
Yeah, when he hands off the kingdom.
Yeah, because to me it's like handing off the keys and realizing it's like, man, you know what? Valkyrie's better than me, and just him realizing
Valkyrie is better than him.
Yeah, she
I love
is.
Valkyrie.
Sure.
I fucking love Valkyrie.
I do too, and it's one of those things where it's a great. It made perfect sense. Whereas like other things might not make sense in the MCU when it comes to passing the mantle or But this one felt like, man, if there's anyone who's gonna be king, Valkyrie, 100%.
But also too, like even the scene right after where Thor is the Asgardian of the galaxy, like as he says, that moment works so well, and I think that moment's hilarious. And Chris Hemsworth is really good with comedy, but where I feel like why that moment worked well. Instead of like the rest of the scenes with Thor primarily is because the other ones were laughing at him, whereas this one we were kind of laughing with him in this moment where he like tells Star like, sure, you're the captain, you're the captain, like sure, whatever. And that's a very, very funny scene. Chris Hemsworth plays it really well, and to me it was just kind of like I kind of want to go into this a little bit later, so I will only like lightly dip my toe in it right now. But the whole kind of the mood of the film, I feel like he just kept it, or the laughing at him kept it way too light when it should have been a little bit more somber. That was just my take, though. And we can go on to that later. I want you guys to have a chance to respond.
I want to do a quick little, since we're kind of jumping around characters, a quick little reference towards one of the biggest MCU movies of all time, and literally they have a freaking ride at Disneyland, the Guardians of the Galaxy, specifically Star-Lord. I mean, if I was a Star-Lord fan, I would be like, yo. I mean, the fact that War Machine's like, so he's an idiot. It's funny.
That moment's hilarious.
It's hysterical.
Who's a Star-Lord fan? Let's be honest.
I like Star-Lord. I was going to say, I like him.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, but is he your favorite character in the MCU? No, that's what I'm saying.
No. Like, but it's one of those things where I kind of don't know.
He is good, though. I love Star-Lord.
I do, too. And between Infinity War and Endgame, what do you guys feel... What do you guys feel that they did with his character and for both films, and what do you guys feel like can be done in Guardians 3?
Okay, I didn't like him in Infinity War at all. Only not
That's
because
what I'm saying, me neither.
But not because of the whole like hitting Thanos in the head. To me, like honestly, I think personally for me, like for you it was the 5 years and Endgame that kind of like threw you off. For me is when the fucking gun turned into bubbles, bro. Like that to me, I was like, whoa, what did I watch? Like, what is this?
Can I counter you and say that the moment in Endgame for me, and I know we haven't gotten to me yet as far as like my counterpoints of Endgame, and I said it in the review. I literally was like in. As soon as they made Scott Lang a baby, I was like, that's a little too Disney Channel for me as far as like bits, as far as jokes go. And where Cap's like, oh my God, he's a baby. And I was like, it's funny, but I'm like, this is too...
But that's very...
Like just like Bubbles for
Ant-Man.
you?
That's Ant-Man-y though. That's
just like Bubbles for you. I was like, really? We're going to make... I was like, I'm an old man now. And I was like,
yeah, but they had to have some sort of problem with like figuring out time travel.
I agree with that.
Like, I think it's like a good like cop-out. I don't know.
I just felt like I was like, this is too like cartoony.
Like, what I will say, like even when I first saw the movie, I thought that scene like stood out, but I thought it stood out in like the funny like Ant-Man type way.
The bubble one?
Yeah.
No, the
baby one turned into a baby and an old man.
Because I did feel like that stood out, but I also feel like they very I feel like the whole second act. You know how in how sometimes they switch the tones in Avengers movies or in Civil War.
Yeah.
How sometimes it feels like a Captain America movie, sometimes it feels like an Iron Man movie. This is the first time I think outside of an Ant-Man movie that they tried to make it feel like an Ant-Man type story.
Also, that scene with him, the goofy one that you say you don't like that set up Captain America's ending. Like, if you know what I mean, like that kind of
the old man.
It showed like the repercussions of time travel in a new way, but also did it.
And it also helped Iron Man look more like a badass. It's like Iron Man's like, oh yeah, you guys needed me.
Oh yeah,
like,
I thought 5 seconds.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Like I really was like, man, Iron Man would be the one to be like, come on guys, I can figure this out.
Yeah, stop bullshitting here.
Yeah, and the fact that one of my favorite parts of Endgame is the fact that Iron Man is the one to take the bullet, is the one to make the sacrifice, not Captain America. It's Iron Man who saves the world. It's Iron Man who beats Thanos. It's Iron Man who eliminates his army. That was so cool. I thought that's... The fact that he was dying and the fact that he went out the way he did is just the coolest part of the whole movie for me. I don't know what you thought of that.
No,
Cade.
yeah, I think I'm a big Iron Man fan, and like obviously I don't want to lose him. He should have stepped out of the suit and had Friday do it for him, like like a genius would.
Sense, yeah.
But
can Friday process the thoughts?
I was gonna say, can Friday do it? I don't know if
mean,
Friday could do that.
No, yeah.
And I love Friday. She's one of my favorites.
Jennifer Connelly, right?
Yeah, I thought the ending was. Wait, sorry, what was your question again?
No, I was saying like the Cap. I mean, not Cap. I'm sorry, Tony coming full circle and kind of being that hero at the end that saved the world.
Yeah,
and saved the
because
universe.
when he started out in the MCU, he was the most selfish guy. Didn't really think about any of the repercussions outside of his immediate circle. He stayed in his garage working on cars. Just sort of self-absorbed. And his last moment in the MCU is him making the ultimate sacrifice, which Cap said to him. I think it was in Infinity War, where he said
Avengers,
the original Avengers, where he goes, "You're not the guy to make the sacrifice move. You're not the guy."
The call,
right.
Yeah. And there he was doing just that, and I think that honestly is his purpose, because he is addicted to being Iron Man, and that's all he lives for. Where we see him, distract himself with his family a little bit after the 5-year leap, like ultimately he goes back to that root of himself, which is he is Iron Man, and that's why it was so powerful when Pepper goes, we're gonna be okay. I'll get Tinder. I'll figure something out.
I do want to go off of that this is going to be a tangent slightly, but I love that you brought up the callback to the original Avengers. That was one thing that I respect this movie on incredibly well that was lacking in Infinity War. The every reference to the other movies, even if you didn't catch it, there's obvious ones like On Your Left, but then there's also the whole cheeseburger moment at the end with Happy.
I love that moment.
I still remember seeing Iron Man when I was young, and that scene's always stood out to me when he asked for cheeseburger.
Yes,
and I was like, that would be me.
Little details like that, but the movie just throws them in so many places. And sorry, I just wanted, because that was one that I, for example, did not catch until you just brought that up, and I'm just like, mad respect to them for being able to do that.
I want to ask you guys something, because I've only seen it once, and I didn't catch when the big moment where it's revealed that Tony has the Iron Infinity Gauntlet. How did that swap out happen? I'm kind of confused.
I could just make an argument. It's not really explained, to be fair, but I can just make an argument that he pulled it out using some sort of like
nanotechnology,
that has some sort of like force pull. And that and that's why it kind of, you see it kind of creep up on his hand.
Yeah, it kind of grows on
it.
But Thanos still has the gauntlet. So how I interpreted the moment is because he has nanotech that can change and fluctuate depending on what he needs at the time. Because we see it happen in Infinity War, where like he at one point like has a sword, or in this one he like takes out rocket launchers.
It literally is like growing a limb. Yeah,
and literally because Thanos has the gauntlet that he created.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what?
He has the Tony Stark, which is one of my gripes with the movie. I will say, like, oh yeah, you have the dwarves who can create this magical gauntlet. And then all of a sudden Tony Stark's just like, I got it.
Oh, I loved it.
Oh no,
I loved it. I was like, Tony Stark is a magical dwarf. That's how good his technology is.
But when he takes him off, Thanos is like, he snaps, and then you're kind of like waiting. And when we have the reveal, they're like, oh shit, the stones aren't there. We cut to Tony and we see his stones, suit creating it's like integrating the stones into his suit. It's not really like another gauntlet.
And when he
it's
says
just like
that
his
line,
technology.
Man, just calling it back with, well, I am Iron Man. I was like, that's perfect.
We started saying I am, and I was like, is he going to say inevitable? No, wait, he's going to say Iron Man. And then he says, because he has that long pause. So I remember that going through my head. And when he says it, I was just like, that moment made me wish I'd seen the movie with my dad, because that was who I saw the first Iron Man movie with. And so I
saw the first Iron Man with my dad too.
Very, very like a thing where it's like, man, I wish I was there. I
think dads like Iron Man. My dad loves Iron Man.
Yeah.
But I want to follow this up by saying, and something I said in my review, and something that I still love, and I feel like now no one's really talking about it. I saw the Collider Hero people kind of mention this, and how the fact that Tony Stark doesn't do the heroic, like, let's put him back through the portal. No, he just kills them all. Yeah. Like, he just murdered like millions of like alien creatures and children of Thanos, and like all of them. And it's one of those things where I love it, because for me it's like, An eye for an eye. Something that we're not supposed to celebrate in comic book movies or actual comic books, you know, is one of those things where Tony Stark would be the guy to be like, no, I'm going to kill all your people and you're going to see them die and then you're going to die.
Yeah,
I just thought that was
cool.
like perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But one thing I want to get into is kind of coming full circle with Infinity War and Endgame and just kind of our closing thoughts. What makes, kind of looking back on Infinity War, especially for you, RB3, how do these two movies work together? Do they work together as one film, or would you say that it's two completely separate stories and it doesn't really work together?
I think for me they're completely separate. I mean,
okay.
Even right off the bat, you see Cap like shave his beard. You see, I feel like they were like, all right, like let's shift it away from what we, you know, let's shift it away from it being just a continuation of Infinity War and let's make it our own thing. For me personally, like I feel like Infinity War's structure doesn't necessarily lend itself to be a conducive like movie. You know what I mean? In terms of like how, I mean, I say this all the time, but I think like just to me it irritates me a little bit that every single storyline has that like, oh, I have to sacrifice something. Oh no, I don't want to sacrifice it. Oh no, I have to sacrifice it anyway. Oh no, it's too late. You know, that happens 4 times in Infinity War. You know what I mean? It happens with Doctor Strange and the Time Stone. It happens with Star-Lord and Gamora. It happens with Thanos and Gamora, and it happens with Wanda and Vision. You know, so that thing happening 4 times, it doesn't gel right with me. You know what I mean? Whereas Endgame has, instead of, you know, I feel like Infinity War had that structure, but didn't necessarily have a clear motivation. Like you said, they're kind of making shit up on the way. And I appreciate it for them doing that, but I also would have appreciated like a more formal cinematic structure, because I feel like it doesn't prioritize anything because it doesn't really have anything to prioritize, you know? Sure. Whereas I feel like the priority in Endgame is to reverse the snap. We have to get the stones, and even though Infinity War has them, they do share a similar thing. Like we have to get the MacGuffin before Thanos gets it. I think in Endgame they approach it more from like, and again, this might just be me being biased because I love Marvel and I love the MCU and I love Avengers and I love Winter Soldier and I love all of these other movies. But I think for me personally, the journey of them getting the stones and Endgame is more compelling than the journey of them trying to get the stones in Infinity War. So
interesting. Yeah,
that's me.
That's your closing.
Or trying to protect the stones.
Yeah, I guess my closing thoughts on between the two films is I agree that Endgame has more emotional stakes, more emotional value, more drama, and less action scenes and less battle stuff than Infinity War does. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like when confronted with, maybe just because I'm a big military battle guy, I just love that stuff, and I already talked about Game of Thrones. I think military and battles and tactics to defeat an enemy is actually very compelling and very interesting and can build a lot of character. That's just my opinion. I think that's why I like Infinity War so much, because it's that idea of like when confronted with the devil or when confronted with this almighty power that's trying to destroy the universe, what do you do in that situation? And I love that Iron Man has his own ideas. Captain America has his own ideas of how to defeat Thanos and how to confront Thanos. And I find it to be like a game of cat and mouse, of like Thanos going at him and then the Avengers going at him. I love the scene where he goes to Doctor Strange, and my first time watching this movie, and he's on the ship, and he tells Doctor Strange, he's like, we know what Thanos wants. We know what he wants to do. Do we really want to bring this guy to Earth? Like, let's fight him. Let's go on offense. And he literally says, let's go on offense, because that's a military tactic. Let's strategize and try to create a situation where we can defeat him. And we see Doctor Strange have a moment. We see Tony Stark have a moment. We see Spider-Man has his moments. I feel like more characters have moments in Infinity War, and we get to see those strategies play out. Yeah,
that I completely disagree with.
Come on, dude. Who has a moment in Endgame besides Cap and Tony?
Who has a moment besides Cap and Tony?
Like a great moment where you feel like, man, this guy's all like Doctor Strange didn't do jack shit in this movie.
He brought literally everybody back.
No, but besides that,
Doctor Strange
like
moment?
when Doctor Strange goes 1-on-1 against Thanos, it's one of the like people cheered in,
that's
the
cool.
audience.
Yeah, that's cool when you throw multiple.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
But see, okay, here's
to me is like you feel like Doctor Strange, Tony Stark, like everyone had their like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Like
half
even
the
Mantis
people were dead. So
yeah, but even Mantis was like, I'm gonna put his ass to sleep. Like everyone had like you can do something different to try and take him down. This is me again, and this is nothing against Endgame. This is why I prefer Infinity War, because I think those battle tactic strategies are actually kind of compelling. And it builds character, and it makes you enjoy these characters a little bit more. But as far as Endgame goes, Endgame is the finale, and I think that's why it could be more emotionally, tugs at your heartstrings, more nostalgic, like Cade said, and that's why Endgame is the perfect finale. It really is. I don't know your guys' closing thoughts on these two movies.
All right, sorry if this is a little long. I'm trying to hit all the points I can.
Go all for it, man.
So. I think that I really like what you have to say about the characters in Infinity War, and I totally respect and see where you guys are coming from. I think it's just different strokes for different folks. Because for me, the whole sense of dread of Thanos getting the stones, like in Infinity War, I'm just saying, every time he acquired one, I felt I just felt everything kind of get a little bit more heightened. I felt kind of myself being like, okay, all right, he beat them once. Okay, he doesn't have to beat them second. Okay, he beat them the second time. All right, and I started kind of feeling that tension rise, and it's always just like this. It is like a suspense sort of thing. Like Hitchcock does that super well. Of just like it's kind of you're just like seeing the ticking bomb go down.
Camilo knows how to get on my good side, man. He starts mentioning Hitchcock. I'm like, I'm listening.
It starts like ticking down to one, and you're just kind of like watching it unfold in front of you. And I think like that's really powerful. Whereas Endgame, with them getting the stones, even though because Cap has that wonderful line in the right before they're actually about to invade Thanos, after they say let's go get the son of the bitch, he's like Scarlett Johansson asks him like, what are you feeling or something, or everything's gonna be okay, and Captain America's like, it has to, because if it doesn't, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Basically, he says that line. And I was like, that's an amazing mentality. Like, that's following Endgame. And then they do the thing to Thanos, and that happens, and that's fine. But then when we go to the 5 years and we start doing the time travel, and they have the limited amount of Pym particles and all this stuff, I didn't feel that this was their last straw. I did not feel that way. Like, and there were moments that were really, really great. Like, Nebula about to hit her thing, and then like, oh, she stops and gets that vision. Like, that's really great. Like, that made me like bring my hand to my mouth, and I was like, oh shit, that's surprising. Also, when they get the Tesseract and then Hulk busts out the stairs,
that was great.
Another surprising and really great moment that subverted expectations. Like, that was really great. However, the tone of those scenes, I didn't feel the whole like, this is our only shot of doing this, because it really was their only shot. They didn't treat it that way in that moment, and I didn't understand that, because they did at the beginning and they did in Infinity War. Here they didn't do that, and for me, watching it, I wasn't so connected to it. I didn't feel it as heavily. I felt it playing itself safer than I would have liked. I still respect everything, and I still had a great time watching it. Still like it a lot. Buying it on Blu-ray. We'll be watching it again for years to come. It is the ultimate ending, as you said. It is a great culmination of the 22 films. I just think, and it does hit higher highs, but I think as a narrative, nothing can beat the strength of Infinity War, the tightness, the suspense, the action. I think the characters are really great in Infinity War. They're not perfect, granted, but I do think that it's all kind of there. And there are things that in Endgame that, to me, like, for example, sorry, this will be my last point.
No, you get it.
When they go back in time, I didn't understand the whole thing about, I thought they could only go back in time to stuff in their past, was I thought what they said. But then people were going back in time to things that they didn't experience. For example, Scarlett Johansson and Hawkeye going to, Black Widow and Hawkeye going to the planet with the Soul Stone. Like, they've never been to space. How are they going to the past right now if they've never been there? And then also War Machine going to the planet with the Power Stone. Like, he's never been there either. I didn't get that. Like, I didn't understand how that time travel exactly worked. So it was also kind of like a teleportation thing, I guess. Yeah. But then the whole thing, Nebula knew what the Soul Stone required to get. And she didn't tell anyone. Like, they planned it out so well. Nebula was never like, oh yeah, by the way, when you get to the Soul Stone, just know one of you is gonna have to die. Like, she never says anything.
Well, when I first saw the movie, I thought that was the most glaring error. But then I looked back on Infinity War and I kind of thought about it, and like, clearly Thanos took Gamora to Volmir and he didn't bring her back. But then I also think that, like, there's really no way of Nebula knowing that Gamora was sacrificed for the Soul Stone. You know, it could have just been the assumption.
It's implied.
I would
it's somewhat
disagree
implied
though, because she has that line when past Gamora comes into play, right? And she says, "What happens to us in the future?" And Nebula tells her, like, "We try to become sisters." And then doesn't she say like Thanos kills you? Basically, like she blatantly knows what happens.
But what I think is, again, this is me just maybe projecting.
You think he got the Soul Stone and then just killed her because
that's what I thought would have. That's why I thought Nebula would.
Now that he had the Soul Stone, he's like, why do I need this girl?
Now, what I do think is a problem is that Nebula didn't tell anybody that there was also another Nebula looking for the Power Stone. I think that's a problem.
She says it to War Machine. War Machine's like, what? Why didn't you tell me
that before? They could have sent somebody else to that one.
And one thing that we have, now seriously, last thing. One thing I did really love about Endgame though was the difference in Thanos compared to Infinity War Thanos. Infinity War Thanos was a much more, I'm here for balance. I am above everyone. I am not. I don't have feelings, and like everything just felt cold and sterile. And that's cool for a villain. I thought he was really great. But this Endgame Thanos slapped, man. Like because he's angry and he knows his destiny. He's like,
the first time we see him, he's covered in blood.
Yeah.
I was like, that's bold.
And he's like, this is my destiny to do this. And these people are trying to reverse it. Now it's personal.
It's great.
Now, and that whole dynamic I thought was fantastic. I loved how they incorporated it.
I loved when Scarlet Witch came out and she's like, you took everything. And he's like, I don't even know you. That was so hard.
That was a great line.
I'm done. Thank you guys.
Cade.
Going back to what you said about it being a continuation or like a separate movie kind of thing, I think it works really well as a continuation, and I think that Marvel does a really good job of grounding these stories, these like huge stories, like in real life. Like, for example, one of the most outstanding scenes for me, even though it's super simple, is when Scott Lang is walking through the memorial in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean...
The one take, it was like a long take, too.
What an incredible way to, like, show the real-life effects of what has happened here on Earth. And I think the reason that Endgame resonates with me more than Infinity War does is because I think the themes of Endgame are so strong. And, for example, like... how characters get back up and persevere and really don't let the worst things get the best of them. Where we do see that happen to one character, Thor. Like we see that happen to Thor, but we see all the other characters sort of power through that and get back up again and avenge half the whole effing universe. And I think that the time travel for me worked really well because I think that the bringing back characters like Gamora, like how you couldn't get Gamora back with the reversing of the snap, but you brought her back through the time travel. I thought that was really smart. And again, on themes, I think Thanos' greed was so potent in Endgame. He's the most narcissistic SOB out there. Like the way he just sat and waited for Nebula to bring him the stones. He just sat there. I think that really showed how entitled Thanos is as a villain. Like Camilo was saying too. I agree strongly with you on that. Not so much on like literally everything else you said, but but all in all, I think this movie really is the best possible bookend to one of the best generations of film I think that has ever and will ever exist.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the fact that this is the conclusion we have for these, especially the big three. Thor is, passed on his baton to a successor, Valkyrie.
Join the Guardians.
Captain America passed on his shield to Falcon. Shout out to that.
Disney Plus show.
Disney Plus show. That's great. Good for him. And I like that Bucky was like, yeah, it's yours, man. He literally nods to him and is like, I know what's going to happen, and you're the right Captain America.
Oh, you want to know what I called over a year ago? Somebody retweeted it on Twitter. I called over a year ago that Falcon was going to become the new Captain America before Infinity War. I said Falcon was going to become the new Captain America. Bucky's going to become the new White Wolf. I don't know about the White Wolf part yet because we haven't seen Black Panther 2, but if Black Panther 2 comes out and he's like playing the White Wolf in that movie, then
wasn't he called the White Wolf?
They called him that. They called him that. Yeah.
But the fact that but still, not Chris Evans, Captain America has lived out his life, and I love that he went back in time and was like, you know what, I'm gonna just stay.
I do have one question.
I'm going with Peggy.
I have one question though. He's supposed to return the stones, right?
He did.
How did he return the Soul Stone?
We just didn't. We I don't know about that.
Dude, that's a little like.
I think that's a movie. RB3.
Also, did he have to put?
He faces off against Red Skull. He's like, wait a minute, you.
Yeah.
I know you.
Ether back into Natalie Portman's body. Like what?
No, I think he probably went back to where the Dark Elves were finding the ether. That's just me trying to.
Yeah, just that same day, be like, hey, Thor, here's your stone back.
For me, the biggest plot hole was him even being there on the bench because it went against all of the rules they set for time travel.
Yeah, there's a few things in there that.
Yeah, they broke time travel rules a lot. They broke a lot of time travel rules.
They broke a few, but I forgave it.
I forgive it.
Yeah. But either way, I love both these movies. RB3, unlike you. No, play.
No, I like Infinity War a lot, and I love Endgame.
Gotcha. I think that we're very similar, except just like the opposite way. But I really do like hearing the other side and like hearing why you don't like Infinity War as much or what problems you have with it. Because it's always very nice to just.
You know what it is?
It's refreshing.
It's balance, man.
Balance
it is just like Thanos says.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I was thinking about, and just to end this conversation on that note, is the idea of disagreements and the idea of. Whether it comes to movies or TV, I really want to stress, especially because I'm going back to Game of Thrones, the idea of hyperbole. I hate the idea of like, Endgame is trash. Yeah. It sucks. And I'm like, bro, what? Like, it'd be like, oh, I like certain things I didn't like. That's what movies are. Yeah. It's good, it's bad, it has more good than bad, or however you want to balance things out. But that's what's good about conversation and the conversation that we just had.
I feel that way. Yeah, no,
it's a good round of applause.
We just fixed American politics.
Just listen to this
Not
podcast.
Quite. Let's talk about Bernie. RB3.
Nah, you gonna get me riled up.
Yeah, I saw that tweet you tweeted out. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more from Camilo, where can the good people find you, man?
Wow. All right. You can find me at Urdaneta on Instagram. And I have a Twitter, but I do not use it. So don't follow me there. I
don't use Instagram, so it's...
but just wanted to say thank you both so much for having me again.
Man.
This was
when
so much
told me you were coming up, I'm like, that's great. And then Cade,
thank you to Cade for being amazing and just I really, really like talking in Endgame and Infinity War with you guys. I feel like I could do it for like the length of Endgame.
3 hours.
5-year job.
Seriously though, thank you. This is an amazing opportunity. I'm very grateful for
Awesome, man. Okay, where can the good people
find you? Hey guys,
I'm
glad I could just swing by here and sort of chill out and talk about this with you guys. So what do I do again? I talk about what?
Just plug yourself.
Plug yourself.
Are you on social media?
Oh yes. Okay, yeah. Follow me at Cade Huseby. Primarily on Instagram. Also check out my YouTube page. That's just Cade Huseby again. And I'm making a lot of sick content, making some stand-up. Go over there, check that out. Go see me at open mic, stalk me, love me, propose to me. Also, I want you guys to go check out Anthony Padilla right now on YouTube.
Hey.
I want you to hit that notification bell, and I want you to name your firstborn child Anthony Padilla.
Does Anthony coming in?
That's a first name. That's a first name.
But also, guys, I just want you to know that you should love yourself, and no matter what your opinions are, they're wrong. I'm kidding. But I'm gonna throw it over to Robert.
Oh, me? Yeah. Well, I gotta plug.
Us. You gotta plug us, man.
Oh yeah, you gotta. Thank you for watching the podcast. Watch First Cut, our YouTube channel. If you're listening on iTunes and Spotify,
our spoiler review of Avengers.
Yeah, we have a non-spoiler review, a spoiler review, and this. So we're just milking that content. Also check out my YouTube channel as well, Robert Butler. I say it all the time on here, and my Twitter account at Director RB3. Also, RIP John Singleton. Oh yeah, honestly, the GOAT, my inspiration for joining USC, going to film school, and it's sad to see him pass away. But we should do next week on on John Singleton.
We should
do that.
Alrighty, guys, for the Meaning of the Podcast, I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace.
That's Camilo.
That's Camilo.